You have never known true pain until you are lying on a stretcher with broken ribs, your hands sticky with blood, and the first person to call asks if you transferred $3,950 yet. I thought the crash was my rock bottom, but I was wrong. The real crash was realizing I was not a daughter, but a wallet. So I did not scream. I just flipped a switch. My name is Riley West, and the first thing I noticed was not the pain, but the ceiling tiles. They were white, speckled with gray, and moving too fast. Then came the sound, a rhythmic beeping that seemed to be counting down the seconds of my remaining sanity. Then, finally, the pain arrived. It was not a dull ache. It was a sharp, jagged creature living inside my chest, clawing at my ribcage every time I tried to inhale. I was in a trauma bay. I knew that much because the light was aggressive, brighter than the sun, designed to expose every flaw and every wound. There was a taste of copper in my mouth. Blood. I tried to move my hand, but it felt heavy, sticky. I looked down. My knuckles were painted in a dark crimson that was slowly drying into a crust. A face appeared above me, a nurse. She looked tired but kind, her eyes scanning the monitors with a practiced efficiency. "Ms. West?" she asked. "Can you hear me? You were in a car accident. You are at St. Mary's. You are safe." Safe. That was a funny word to use when your sedan had just been turned into an accordion by an SUV that ran a red light. I blinked, trying to clear the fog in my brain. My chest felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. "My phone," I rasped. The sound of my own voice surprised me. It sounded like gravel grinding together. "We have your personal effects right here," the nurse said. She reached into a clear plastic bag on the counter and pulled out my smartphone. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass over the display, but it lit up. It was vibrating. I squinted at the screen through the haze of painkillers and adrenaline. The name flashing on the caller ID was Mom, for a split second. A warm, naive part of my brain thought, she knows. Somehow. She felt it. A mother's intuition. She is calling to tell me she is coming. I nodded at the nurse, indicating I wanted to take the call. She looked hesitant, probably wondering if I was lucid enough to speak, but she pressed the green button and held the device up to my ear. My hands were too weak to hold it myself. "Hello?" I whispered. I expected tears. I expected panic. I expected a voice trembling with the terror of almost losing a child. "Riley, pick up the phone. Finally." The voice was sharp, piercing through the fog of morphine like a scalpel. It was my mother, Denise Caldwell. She sounded breathless, but not from running to the hospital. She sounded breathless from indignation. "Mom," I said, the word catching in my throat. Listen to me," she cut me off. "I am standing at the counter at the Delta Sky Club, the VIP lounge. There is a line of 5 people behind me. Riley, 5 people, and the card just declined." I blinked, staring at the ceiling tile directly above me. It had a water stain shaped like a cloud. "What?" I asked. "The card," she hissed. "My supplementary card, the platinum one. I tried to pay for the upgrade and the lounge access, and the little machine beeped at me. It says declined. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" I tried to process the words. My brain was trying to reconstruct the accident, the screech of tires, the shattering glass, the impact, and my mother was talking about airport lounges. "Mom," I said again, trying to inject some reality into the conversation. "I am in the hospital. I was in a crash." There was a pause on the other end of the line. For a second, I thought she had heard me. I thought the gravity of the situation had landed. "Okay," Denise said. "But did you change the spending limits?" The air left my lungs, and it wasn't because of the broken ribs this time. "I am in the ER, I said, my voice rising slightly, cracking. "There is blood on me." "Riley, focus," Denise snapped. "I need you to transfer $3,950 immediately. The upgrade is $3,000, and the lounge fee and some incidentals are the rest. I need a buffer." Transfer $4,000 just to be safe. Do it right now." "I can't," I stammered. "I can barely move." "Don't give me that," she said. Her voice dropped an octave, entering that cold, menacing tone she used when I was a child and hadn't cleaned my room to her standards. "If you are unconscious, you need to wake up and send it. I will not be embarrassed in front of these people. Riley, I am wearing my new coat. They are looking at me like I am a pauper. Fix it." "If you are unconscious, you need to wake up." The world seemed to stop spinning. The beeping of the heart monitor slowed down in my ears, becoming a distant metronome. I looked at the nurse holding the phone. She was biting her lip, her eyes wide. She had heard every word. The volume was high enough. "Transfer the money," Denise demanded. "Now. I am swiping again in 2 minutes." The line went dead. She hung up. She didn't wait for a confirmation. She assumed obedience. She assumed that, like always, I would find a way to make the problem go away. The nurse slowly lowered the phone. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and horror. "Is there—" the nurse started, then cleared her throat. "Is there someone else we can call? Your husband? A friend? Maybe the father of your child? I saw the car seat in the back of the wreckage photos." The car seat. My heart hammered against my bruised ribs. A bolt of pure terror shot through me. "Sophie," I gasped. "The car was empty except for you," the nurse said quickly, placing a hand on my shoulder to steady me. "Police confirmed. You were alone." Right. Sophie was at daycare. It was Tuesday afternoon. She was at the Little Acorn Center until 5 o'clock. She was safe. She was playing with blocks or napping on a cot. My mother knew I had a daughter. Denise knew Sophie existed. Denise knew that if I was in a car wreck bad enough to be in the trauma bay, her granddaughter's mother was in critical condition. But Denise hadn't asked about Sophie. Not one word. She hadn't asked if Sophie was in the car. She hadn't asked who was picking Sophie up if I was incapacitated. She had asked for $3,950. I looked at my hand again. The blood was drying, tightening the skin. I realized then that the liquid draining out of me wasn't just vital fluid. For 30 years, I had been bleeding money, energy, and dignity into the bottomless pit that was Denise Caldwell. I was not her daughter. I was her wallet. I was an asset. I was an insurance policy against a lifestyle she couldn't afford on her own. "Ma'am?" the nurse asked gently. "Do you want me to call your father?" My father had been gone for 10 years. Divorce, he ran as fast as he could. "No," I said. My voice was different now. The gravel was gone. It was replaced by something colder, something steel. "Give me the phone, and give me a few minutes." "Are you sure?" "You need to rest. The doctor is coming in to set that rib." "I need the phone," I said. It wasn't a request. The nurse handed it to me. Her name tag said, Janelle. "I will be right outside," Janelle said softly. "Just press the red button on the remote if you need help." She pulled the curtain slightly, giving me a semblance of privacy. I lay there, staring at the cracked screen. The pain in my chest was blinding, a solid 8 out of 10. But my mind had never been clearer. It was as if the impact of the crash had knocked something loose, or perhaps knocked something into place. I unlocked the phone. My thumb left a bloody smear on the sensor, but it worked. I navigated to the banking app. The blue icon stared back at me. I tapped it. Face ID required. I held the phone up. My face was swollen. I could feel the tightness around my left eye. I wondered if the camera would even recognize me. I wondered if I was even the same person I was this morning. The woman who woke up this morning was a dutiful daughter who worked 60 hours a week as a project manager to fund her mother's delusions of grandeur. The woman lying on this gurney was something else entirely. The little lock icon on the screen spun. It hesitated. Then, it unlocked. "Welcome. Riley." I went straight to the account overview. The numbers glared at me. My savings were healthy, but they were stagnant. They should have been double what they were. I clicked on the transaction history. Yesterday. Nordstrom. $420. Yesterday. The Ivy Restaurant. $215. 3 days ago. Spa de la Mer. $600. All Denise. All on the supplementary card I gave her when I got my first big promotion 5 years ago. Just for emergencies, she had said. Just so I am safe. Safety. That was the lie. I clicked on the tab marked Card Management. I saw her name. Denise Caldwell. Authorized user. I closed my eyes for a second. The conditioning was deep. A voice in my head, a voice that sounded remarkably like hers, screamed at me. She is your mother. You owe her. She raised you. She sacrificed for you. Don't be ungrateful. It is just money. You can make more money. Then I heard her voice from 2 minutes ago. If you're unconscious, wake up and send it. She didn't care if I died. As long as the check cleared first. I opened my eyes. The tears that had been threatening to fall evaporated. I didn't feel sad. I felt surgical. I tapped on her name. Options appeared. Set limit, freeze card, remove user. I didn't hesitate. I didn't tremble. My finger hovered over remove user. But then I stopped. Removing her would take time to process. She might still be able to push a pending charge through if the merchant forced it. I needed something immediate. I needed a hard stop. I selected freeze card. Are you sure you want to freeze this card? All transactions will be declined immediately. Confirm, I whispered. The toggle switch on the screen slid from green to gray. I wasn't done. I went to the linked accounts section. This was the backup. If her card declined, the bank was set up to pull from my main checking account to cover overdrafts. It was a feature Denise had insisted on for her protection. I tapped overdraft protection. Disable. Warning. Disabling this feature may result in declined transactions and insufficient fund fees. Good, I said to the empty room. I tapped confirm. I watched the little loading circle spin. It felt like watching a bomb being defused. Or maybe, watching a bomb being armed. Settings updated. I let the phone drop onto my chest. The pain flared up again, reminding me that I had broken bones, that my body was damaged. But for the first time in my adult life, my finances were intact. I imagined her, Denise Caldwell, standing in the Delta Sky Club, wearing her new coat that I probably paid for. She was likely tapping her foot, sighing loudly so everyone around her knew she was inconvenienced. She was holding that platinum card, waiting for the magic to happen. She was waiting for the invisible servant, her daughter, to fix the glitch. She would swipe again. The machine would think for a moment. It would reach out to the server. It would look for the open door, the open wallet, the open vein that was Riley West, and it would find a brick wall. The nurse, Janelle, poked her head back in. You okay, hun? Your heart rate spiked on the monitor. I looked at her. I managed a weak, grim smile. I am fine, I said. Better than fine. Did you call your family? She asked. No, I said. I handled some business. I looked at the blood on my hands again. It was mine. It belonged to me. Just like the money in that account. I thought about Sophie. I would call her daycare in a moment. I would call my neighbor to pick her up. I would protect her. And the best way to protect her was to stop the leak. My mother was standing at the register, waiting for my money to flow like water. But today, the river was changing course. The morphine they gave me began to settle in, not removing the pain so much as pushing it down a long hallway where I could still see it but no longer had to feel its sharpest teeth. The silence in the room, after I had hung up on my mother, felt heavy. It was a physical weight. It was the same silence I had grown up with, the silence that filled our house whenever I failed to be useful, lying there, staring at the sterile white curtain. My mind did not drift to the accident. It drifted back to the beginning, to the training. People talk about grooming in dark, hushed tones regarding predators and victims, usually involving abuse that leaves visible scars. But there is another kind of grooming. It is quieter. It happens at the kitchen table. It happens in the car on the way to school. It is financial grooming. The slow, methodical process of training a child to believe that their primary purpose in life is to serve as an asset to their parents. I was 6 years old the first time I understood the transaction. I had drawn a picture at school. It was a crude crayon drawing of a house and a sun with a smiley face. I was so proud of it. I ran to my mother, Denise, who was sitting on the patio with a glass of white wine and a cigarette. I held it up, blocking her view of the garden. She did not smile. She reached out, took the paper, and set it on the table under her drink to stop the condensation from staining the wood. "That is a nice coaster." "Riley," she had said. 2 weeks later, I won a spelling bee. The prize was a $20 gift certificate to a local bookstore. I brought it home. Denise's eyes lit up. She hugged me. She actually pulled me into her chest, and I smelled her perfume, a scent of gardenias and cold ambition. She told me I was a good girl. She took the certificate and said she would keep it safe. I never saw it again, but I remembered the hug. I remembered the equation: value equals affection, lack of value equals invisibility. That was the lesson. It was hammered into me not with fists, but with sighs. If I got straight A's, I was worth a conversation at dinner. If I got a B, Denise would look through me as if I were a ghost. I learned to scramble for achievements like a dog scrambling for scraps under a table. But as I got older, the currency changed. Grades were no longer enough. The currency became actual currency. The trap was sprung fully when I was 21. I had just landed my first real corporate job. I was an assistant junior analyst, making a salary that seemed astronomical to a college student, but was barely enough to survive in the city. I remember the day vividly. Denise took me to lunch. She was charming. She was glowing. She ordered champagne. She told me how proud she was that I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. Then, over the dessert course, she laid out the paperwork. It was not a demand. It was a performance of maternal concern. "Riley," she had said, her voice dropping to a whisper of worry, "the world is a scary place. What if something happens to me? What if I am stranded somewhere and my wallet is stolen? What if I have a medical emergency and they will not treat me because I cannot access my funds immediately?" I was young. I was naive. I loved her, or I thought I did. I wanted to be the protector. She slid a form across the table. It was an authorization form for our bank. It linked her checking account to mine. It was labeled overdraft protection. "It is just a safety net," she had assured me. "It just means that if I ever have an emergency and my account dips below zero, it will pull from yours so I do not get hit with a fee. It is for my safety. Riley, do you want your mother to be unsafe?" I signed it. I signed it because I wanted to be a good daughter. I signed it because I wanted that hug again. At first, it was quiet. A $20 charge here, a $50 charge there. Denise would call and say, "Oh, I forgot to transfer funds before I went to the grocery store. Thank you for catching that, honey." I felt important. I felt useful. But the word emergency is elastic in the hands of a narcissist. 6 months in, the charges grew. A $300 dinner, a $500 spa treatment. I called her, panic rising in my throat because I had rent to pay. "Mom," I said, "the bank took $500 from me because your account was overdrawn." She did not apologize. She laughed. "Oh, relax. Riley," she said, "I raised you for 18 years. Do you know how much diapers cost? Do you know how much I spent on your braces? Think of it as a small return on investment." That was the first time she said it out loud. Investment. I was not a child she had nurtured. I was a stock she had purchased. And now she was expecting dividends. The arrangement shifted. It was no longer about safety. It became an unspoken contract. Denise would live the life she felt she deserved, the life of a wealthy socialite. Despite having a mediocre income from her alimony and sporadic consulting work, and I would be the silent shock absorber. I stopped looking at my bank notifications because they made me physically ill. Every time my phone buzzed, I feared it was the bank telling me I was $300 poorer. But I never turned it off. I never unlinked the accounts. Why? Because every time I hinted at it, every time I suggested we separate our finances, Denise would unleash a weapon far more effective than anger. She would unleash martyrdom. She would talk about her sacrifices. She would talk about how she gave up her career to raise me. She would talk about the labor pains. She would look at me with wet, wounded eyes and ask if I really cared so little about the woman who gave me life that I would begrudge her a simple lunch with her friends. She twisted the concept of filial piety until it was a noose around my neck. I convinced myself this was normal. I looked at my friends who helped their parents with rent or medical bills, and I told myself I was doing the same. But deep down, I knew the difference. My friends were helping their parents survive. I was helping my mother perform. I was funding a theater production where Denise Caldwell played the role of the rich, successful matriarch, and I was the stagehand paying for the costumes. Lying in the hospital bed, the memory of last Christmas washed over me. It was the moment the cracks in my denial became too wide to ignore. I had gone to her house for dinner. The tree was magnificent, covered in crystal ornaments. There was a pile of gifts under it. I had brought her a silk scarf. Expensive, tasteful. I had saved for 2 months to buy it. She opened it, looked at it, and gave a tight, polite smile. "It is lovely, Riley," she said. But I saw the new collection at the boutique downtown. The red one would have matched my coat better. Then she handed me my gift. It was an envelope. Inside was a card. I opened it. It read, "To my darling daughter." Inside the card was a printout. It was a receipt for a donation made in my name to a charity I had never heard of, a charity for the preservation of historical gardens. "I donated $200 in your name." She beamed. "Isn't that nice?" Later that night, I checked my bank account. There was a withdrawal for $200. She had used my money to make a donation in my name as a gift to me. I sat in my car that night and stared at the steering wheel. I tried to cry, but I couldn't. I just felt hollow. I realized then that to Denise, my money was not mine. It was hers. It was simply stored in a different account until she decided she needed it. The math began to scroll through my mind now, clear and cold as the numbers on the heart monitor next to me. I thought about the country club membership she insisted she needed for networking, $4,000 a year, paid by the overdraft. I thought about the premium health insurance she demanded because the standard plan was too restrictive, $6,000 a year, paid by the overdraft. I thought about the weekly salon visits, the dinners, the clothes that filled her closet with the tags still on them. It was not hundreds, it was thousands, tens of thousands, over 8 years. It was enough to put a down payment on a house. It was enough to start a college fund for Sophie. It was enough to take a year off work and write the book I always wanted to write. I had not been supporting a family. I had been feeding a black hole. And the worst part? The absolute worst part was that she did not even appreciate it. A black hole does not say thank you for the light it swallows. It just demands more. She called it care. She called it family duty. She called it being a good daughter. But as the pain in my ribs throbbed in time with my heartbeat, I finally named it what it was. It was theft. It was theft of my labor, theft of my future, theft of my safety. Denise had groomed me to be a host organism. She had trained me to feel guilty for having needs, to feel selfish for having boundaries, and to feel grateful for the privilege of being consumed by her. She had built a cage around me, bar by golden bar, and told me it was a palace. She had convinced me that the door was locked from the outside, that I was trapped by duty and blood and history. I closed my eyes and took a shallow, painful breath. The image of the banking app on my phone rose in my mind, the little gray toggle switch, the words, "Settings updated." For 30 years, I had believed the lie. I had believed I was helpless to stop her. I had believed that saying no was a moral failing. But lying there, broken and bleeding, I realized the ultimate truth of the cage she had built. When you live in a cage too long, you forget that the door was never locked. You forget that you are the one holding the key. And I had just turned it. The screen of my smartphone was cool against my fingertips, a stark contrast to the burning heat radiating from my chest. The nurse, Janelle, had stepped out, leaving me in the semi-private bubble of the trauma bay. The curtain fluttered slightly from the air conditioning, but my world had narrowed down to the 6 inches of illuminated glass in my hand. I was no longer a patient. I was an operator. My body was broken. but my administrative capacity was running at 100% efficiency. I navigated back to the main menu of the banking application. I had frozen the card. Yes, that was the tourniquet. But a tourniquet is a temporary measure. It stops the immediate blood loss, but it does not fix the underlying wound. To do that, you have to go in and stitch the artery shut. You have to remove the foreign object that caused the puncture. I tapped on the gear icon in the top right corner. Settings. I scrolled down past the notifications, past the paperless statement options, until I found the section titled Linked Coverage and Authorized Spending. I clicked it. The screen loaded. A small spinning wheel of death that usually made me anxious. Today, it felt like anticipation. It felt like the slow climb of a roller coaster before the drop. There it was, Denise Caldwell. Next to her name was a small, bright green dot. The word active was written beside it in a cheerful, harmless font. That green dot. I stared at it. For 8 years. That green dot had been the traffic light that allowed my mother to drive straight through the boundaries of my life without ever hitting the brakes. It meant go. It meant take. It meant yes. It was the electronic equivalent of a perpetually open door. I tapped on her name. The submenu expanded, revealing the granular details of her access. Supplementary card status. Frozen. User initiated. Overdraft protection. Link. Disabled. User initiated. View balance. Permission. Active. Transfer authority. Active. She could still see what I had. She could still transfer funds if she had my routing number, which she did, because I had foolishly given it to her years ago for a one-time emergency. I did not just want to stop the transaction at the airport. I wanted to erase her digital footprint from my financial existence. I wanted to evict her. I scrolled to the bottom of the page. There was a button written in red text, separate from the others. It was designed to be hard to find, tucked away so you would not press it by accident. Remove authorized user and unlink accounts. I placed my thumb over the text. My heart rate monitor beeped a little faster. Beep, beep, beep. It was the only sound in the room that betrayed my internal state. My face was stone. I pressed it. A dialog box popped up in the center of the screen, dimming the rest of the interface. It was a standard security protocol, a final check to ensure the user wasn't making a catastrophic mistake. Are you sure you want to permanently remove Denise Caldwell from your account profile? The text continued below in smaller print. This action will immediately cancel all active cards associated with this user. It will terminate any recurring transfers or scheduled bill payments linked to this user. This user will lose all visibility into your account balance and transaction history. This action cannot be undone without a new authorization form. Cannot be undone. Those words should have terrified me. They should have triggered the guilt algorithm my mother had installed in my brain when I was a toddler. I should have been thinking about how she would feel, how she would react, how she would survive. But I wasn't thinking about her survival. I was thinking about mine. I looked at the confirm button. It was blue, bold. I didn't hesitate. I didn't tremble. I didn't say a prayer. I tapped confirm. The screen went white for a second as the request processed. I held my breath. Then, the menu reappeared. The name Denise Caldwell was gone. The list of authorized users was empty. Wait, not just empty. It was clean. The green dot was gone. In its place was a gray void. Done, I whispered. The word came out like a puff of smoke. But I wasn't finished. Evicting the tenant was step 1. Changing the locks was step 2. I went back to the security tab. I found the option for two-factor authentication. It was currently set to standard, which meant it only asked for a code if the login came from a new device. I changed it to always, every login, every transaction, every time. I set the verification method to an authenticator app, not SMS. My mother knew my phone carrier details. She had socially engineered her way into my phone records before when she wanted to check who I was dating in college. I wouldn't put it past her to try to clone my SIM card or call the provider pretending to be me, but she couldn't replicate the biometric generator on my physical device. Next, I went to transaction limits. I set the daily transfer limit to $500. Anything above that would require a voice verification with a bank representative. I set the alerts to aggressive, notify me of any login attempt, any failed password attempt, any change to personal information. I was building a fortress. I was laying bricks and mortar around the ruins of my bank account. I was installing sniper towers and digging moats. Finally, I changed my password. It had been Riley Loves Mom 123 for a decade. Pathetic. I typed in a new string of characters, 30 digits, a random chaotic mix of symbols, numbers, and letters that had absolutely no emotional connection to my life. It was a code of war, not a code of love. Settings saved. I locked the phone and let my hand drop to the mattress. I closed my eyes and let the visualization take over. I constructed the scene in my mind with the clarity of a 4K movie. I could see the Delta Sky Club desk. The countertop would be polished white marble. The lighting would be soft, amber, expensive. Denise would be standing there. She would have that posture she adopted when she wanted to intimidate service workers. Spine stiff, chin tilted up 20 degrees, a tight, artificial smile that didn't reach her eyes. She would be tapping her fingernails on the marble. The agent behind the desk would be young, polite, and terrified. She would run the card again. I imagined the machine, the little black terminal. Processing Denise would be sighing. "It is probably just a fraud alert," she would say loud enough for the people in line to hear. "My daughter travels a lot. The bank gets confused." Then, the terminal would beep, a harsh, flat tone, declined. "Try it again," Denise would snap. "I have tried it 3 times, ma'am," the agent would say. "It says invalid merchant ID or restricted card. Actually, now it says card canceled." "Canceled?" Denise's voice would crack. The mask would slip. "That is impossible. I am an authorized user. Call the manager." "I cannot override a bank decline, ma'am. Do you have another form of payment?" The line behind her would shift. People would check their watches. Someone would cough. The humiliation would start to crawl up Denise's neck like a rash. She lived for status. She breathed exclusivity. And now, she was being rejected in the very temple of privilege she worshipped. She would try to call me. She would get my voicemail. She would try to log into the app on her phone to transfer money from my savings to check what was wrong. She would see, access denied, user not recognized. She would realize the door was not just stuck, it was bricked over. A sensation of cold fluid moved up my arm. The nurse had returned while I was in my trance and started the IV drip, the painkillers. "This will help with the edge," Janelle said softly. Adjusting the flow, I wanted to tell her that the edge was already gone. I felt lighter than air, the crushing weight on my chest, the fractured ribs, the bruising. It was all still there physically, but the spiritual pressure had vanished. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for impact. I had already crashed, and I had survived. I didn't make them poor, I thought, the words forming clearly in the silence of my mind. I just stopped making them rich. There is a difference, a massive, canyons-wide difference. I was not taking anything that belonged to them. I was simply reclaiming the territory that was mine. I was reclaiming the fruit of my labor. The hours of my life I had traded for those numbers on the screen. I opened my eyes and looked at the IV bag dripping clear liquid into my vein. Drip, drip, drip. It was steady. It was regulated. It was mine. Then, the phone on my chest buzzed. It was a short, sharp vibration. Then another. Then another. It wasn't a rhythm. It was a seizure. The phone began to dance on the hospital blanket, vibrating so hard and so fast that it made a continuous, angry humming sound. Bzzzt, 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 bzzzt. The screen lit up, flashing notification after notification, stacking on top of each other so fast I couldn't read the names. But I knew. The storm had made landfall. I didn't reach for the phone. I just watched it rattle against my broken ribs, and for the first time in 30 years, I didn't feel the urge to answer. I let it ring. The phone on my chest did not buzz like a communication device. It buzzed like a bomb timer. The screen lit up, illuminating the dim trauma bay with a harsh, artificial blue light. I looked down. The notification banner was not a question. It was not a greeting. It was a command, written entirely in capital letters, screaming from the digital void. My card declined. Fix it. I stared at the words. There was no punctuation other than the periods, which felt less like grammatical markers and more like bullet holes. There was no preamble. There was no, "Oh my God, are you okay?" There was no, "I heard about the crash." There was no, "Is my granddaughter safe?" There was only the immediate, furious demand of a woman who had been momentarily inconvenienced by reality. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half wheeze. It hurt my ribs. A sharp spike of agony that radiated from my sternum to my spine, but I could not stop. It was funny. It was darkly, twistedly, absurdly funny. I had just survived a collision that totaled a 2-ton vehicle. I was lying in a hospital bed with an IV drip and a chest that felt like it had been kicked by a mule, and my mother was texting me as if I were technical support for her lifestyle. Another text came through, stacking on top of the first. "You embarrassed me." The waiter took the champagne away. "Transfer the funds, now." I swiped the notification away, not to delete it, but to clear the view. I wanted to see if she would break. I wanted to see if, perhaps, in a moment of clarity, she would remember that she was a mother before she was a consumer. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The phone buzzed again. This time, the text was longer. "I know you are reading this. I can see the receipt. If I do not have $5,000 in my account in 10 minutes, I am coming to the hospital." I read that sentence twice. I am coming to the hospital. For a normal person, for a normal family, that sentence would be a promise of comfort. It would mean, "I am coming to hold your hand. I am coming to bring you soup. I am coming to make sure the doctors are treating you right." But in the language of Denise Caldwell, it was a threat. It was an ultimatum. It was the equivalent of a loan shark telling a debtor they were coming to break kneecaps. She was not coming to visit a daughter. She was coming to kick a vending machine that had swallowed her dollar. She was coming to fix a broken ATM. The realization washed over me, cold and clarifying. She did not care if I was broken. She only cared that I was not dispensing cash. I looked up. Janelle, the nurse, was standing in the doorway, checking a chart. She looked up and caught my eye. She saw the phone in my hand and the strange, grim expression on my face. "Everything okay?" she asked, stepping into the room. "Is your family on the way?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, unnervingly so. "My mother is coming, but she is not coming to visit." Janelle frowned, tilting her head. "I don't understand." "She is coming to get her credit card reactivated," I said. "And I need your help. I need you to help me set a stage." Janelle moved closer, her professional demeanor shifting to confusion. "Set a stage? Ms. West, you have broken ribs and a concussion. You need to rest, not play games." "It is not a game," I said, gripping the bedsheet. "It is a trap. I need you to make me look worse than I am. I need you to dim the lights. I need you to put the oxygen mask back on my face. I need you to pull the blinds and put a restricted visitors sign on the door." "Why?" Janelle asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because I need a witness," I said. "If she walks in here and sees me sitting up, holding a phone, she will just scream at me until I give in. She will make it about her embarrassment at the airport. She will make it about her stress. She will manipulate the narrative." I took a breath, wincing as my lungs expanded against the bone. "But if she thinks I am unconscious," I continued, "if she thinks I cannot hear her, she will show you who she really is. She will not ask about my health. She will talk about the money, and I need you to see it. I need someone else to see it, so I know I'm not crazy." Janelle looked at me for a long moment. She looked at the phone buzzing again in my hand. She looked at the blood that had been cleaned from my face but still stained my hairline. She was a nurse. She had seen trauma. She had seen families fall apart in waiting rooms. She knew the look of a woman who was terrified, not of dying, but of living with the people who were supposed to love her. "Okay," Janelle said. She didn't ask another question. She just went to work. She moved with efficiency. She reached up and dimmed the overhead lights until the room was bathed in a soft, twilight gloom. She went to the supply cabinet and pulled out a fresh oxygen mask, hooking it up to the wall and placing it gently over my nose and mouth. The hiss of the gas was rhythmic, hypnotic. "I will turn the monitor volume down," she said, tapping the screen of the cardiac machine. "So the beeping is just a background noise. It makes people whisper. It makes them nervous." "Perfect," I said, my voice muffled by the plastic. "I will be at the station, right outside," Janelle said. "I will let them in, but I will tell them you are sedated. I will tell them you cannot be disturbed." "Thank you," I said. She nodded and slipped out, closing the door until it was just a crack ajar. I had one more call to make. I pulled up my contacts. I scrolled past the friends I hadn't seen in months because I was working 2 jobs to pay Denise's bills. I scrolled past the colleagues who only knew the professional, put together Riley. I stopped at a name I hadn't called in almost a year. Grandpa Frank, Frank West, my father's father, the man my mother called that stingy old goat, the man who had driven a truck for 40 years, saved every penny, and lived in a small, paid-off house in the suburbs. He was the only person in my family who had ever looked at Denise with open disdain. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. "Riley?" His voice was gravel and warmth. "I saw the news about a crash on I-95. I had a bad feeling. Is that you?" "It's me, Grandpa," I said. "I am at St. Mary's. I am okay, banged up, but okay. I am coming," he said immediately. I could hear the jingle of keys in the background. "I will be there in 20 minutes. Grandpa, wait," I said. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to bring your legal file. The one with the medical proxy forms we talked about 3 years ago. The ones we never notarized because Mom threw a fit." There was a silence on the line. Frank West was a smart man. He connected the dots instantly. "She is there, isn't she?" he asked. His voice dropped, losing its warmth and gaining a hard, protective edge. "She is on her way," I said. "And she is bringing a lawyer, or she will threaten to—" I cut her off. "Grandpa, I froze the accounts. I removed her name. Everything." "Good girl," Frank said. The pride in his voice made my throat tighten. "It is about damn time." "She's going to try to take control," I said. "She will try to say I am incompetent. She will try to get power of attorney so she can unlock the funds. I need you here. I need you to stop her." "I am leaving now," Frank said. "Don't sign anything. Don't say anything. If she tries to force a pen in your hand, you drop it. Do you hear me? You hold the line. Riley, I am bringing the cavalry." "I will," I said. "Drive safe." I hung up. Now, the stage was set. I placed the phone on the tray table. Face up, I opened the voice recorder app. I pressed the red button. Recording started. 14:15 p.m. I slid the phone under the edge of the pillow. Just enough so the microphone was exposed, but the screen was hidden. I wanted every word. I wanted every threat. I wanted the audio file that would play in my head whenever I felt guilty in the future. Then, I lay back. I closed my eyes. I adjusted my breathing to be shallow and slow, mimicking the rhythm of someone deep in a narcotic haze. The weight was agonizing. My ribs throbbed. My head pounded, but the adrenaline kept me razor sharp. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then I heard it. It was distinct. It cut through the low hum of the hospital ventilation and the distant murmur of nurses. Click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. It was the sound of expensive heels hitting commercial-grade linoleum. It was a fast, staccato rhythm. It was not the hesitant shuffle of a worried visitor. It was the march of a woman on a mission. It was the sound of a CEO walking into a boardroom to fire everyone. I heard voices outside the door. You cannot go in there. Janelle's voice was firm, professional. The patient is sedated. She needs rest. I am her mother. Denise's voice rang out, shrill and piercing. Do not tell me I cannot see my own daughter. Get out of my way. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Janelle said. This is a trauma unit. I don't care if it is the Vatican, Denise snapped. She has something of mine, and I am going to get it. My stomach twisted. She didn't even ask if I was conscious. She didn't ask if I was stable. She has something of mine. You can go in for 2 minutes, Janelle said, sounding appropriately cowed, playing her part perfectly. But do not wake her. Her vitals are unstable. Fine, Denise huffed. 2 minutes is all I need. The door handle turned. The latch clicked. The sound of the heels entered the room. The air shifted. I could smell her perfume. Chanel and stale cigarette smoke. It filled the small, sterile space, choking out the smell of antiseptic. She was not alone. I heard a second set of footsteps, softer, shuffling. That would be Tessa, my younger sister, the golden child, the one who had never worked a day in her life because she was too sensitive for the corporate world. Look at her, Tessa whispered. She looks terrible. She looks fine, Denise said. Her voice was right above me now. I could feel her presence looming over the bed. She is just sleeping. It is the drugs. They pump them full of morphine so they don't complain. I felt a hand on my arm. It wasn't a caress. It was a shake. Riley, Denise hissed. Riley, wake up. I didn't move. I kept my breathing steady. Inhale, exhale. Mom, stop, Tessa said. The nurse said she is sedated. She is faking, Denise said. She always was dramatic. Remember when she had the flu and missed my birthday dinner? Riley, wake up. The card is still declined. I tried it at the gift shop downstairs. It is embarrassing. You need to unlock it. She shook my arm harder. Pain shot up my shoulders. But I remained limp. I was a rag doll. I was a corpse. She is out cold. Mom, Tessa said. What do we do? We can't pay the driver. We can't check into the hotel. We get the phone, Denise said. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was terrified they could see it through the blanket. Her phone, Denise repeated. Find it. It has the face thing. If we hold it up to her face, it opens. I saw her do it last Thanksgiving. I heard the sound of her rummaging through the plastic bag on the counter, the rustle of my clothes, the clatter of my keys. Here it is, Denise said. Triumph dripped from her voice. Mom, is that legal? Tessa asked. I am her mother, Denise spat. I gave birth to her. Her money is my money. It is compensation. Tessa, compensation for the stretch marks. Now, hold her eyelid open. I lay there, the darkness behind my eyelids swirling with red rage. She was going to physically pry my eye open to unlock a banking app. She was going to violate my body, my autonomy, my recovery, just to pay for a hotel room she didn't need. I felt her fingers brush my forehead. They were cold. Hold the phone steady, Denise ordered. This was it. This was the moment Janelle needed to see. This was the moment the recording needed to capture. They were not family. They were scavengers picking at a carcass before it was even cold. I prepared myself. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left in my battered body. I wasn't going to let them open my eye. I was going to open it myself. And when I did, the first thing they would see would not be a vacant stare. It would be the look of a woman who had just realized that the only way to survive the fire was to burn the house down. But not yet. I needed them to commit. I needed them to touch me. Hurry up, Denise snapped. The battery is low. Her thumb pressed against my eyelid. Gotcha, I thought. The door to my trauma room did not open. It was breached. I lay perfectly still, my eyes closed, my breathing shallow and regulated, mimicking the rhythm of the deep sedation Janelle had promised them I was under. The oxygen mask over my face was a blessing. It hid the tightness of my jaw and the way my lips were pressed together in a line of pure, white-hot fury. "I am her mother, and I have rights." Denise's voice was a weaponized shriek, echoing off the sterile walls. "Do not tell me to lower my voice. My daughter is incapacitated, and I am the next of kin. Now move." There was a scuffle of footsteps, the squeak of rubber soles against linoleum, Janelle trying to block the path, and then the heavy, authoritative clack of hard leather shoes joining the chaotic symphony of Denise's heels. "Nurse," a male voice spoke. It was smooth, oily, and dripping with condescension. "I am Miles Carver, legal counsel for the Caldwell family. We are not here to disrupt. We are here to facilitate. My client has statutory rights to access her daughter during a medical crisis." Miles Carver. I knew the name. He was a shark who operated out of a strip mall office downtown, specializing in estate disputes and divorces where one party wanted to burn the other to the ground. He was expensive, aggressive, and morally bankrupt. The fact that Denise had brought him here, to an emergency room, less than 2 hours after my accident, told me everything I needed to know. This was not a hospital visit. This was a hostile takeover. 2 minutes, Janelle said, her voice tight. "And if I see any distress on the monitor, I am calling security." "We will be quick," Denise snapped. The door clicked shut, cutting off the noise of the hallway. But sealing me in a room with 3 predators, I felt the air pressure change as they crowded around the bed. I could smell them. Denise smelled of anxiety and expensive perfume. Tessa, my sister, smelled of vanilla body spray and cigarette smoke, and Miles Carver smelled of dry cleaning chemicals and peppermint. "Jesus," Tessa whispered. "She looks pathetic." It was the first comment anyone had made about my condition. Not "is she okay?" Not "will she walk again?" Just an observation of my aesthetic value. I was broken, bruised, and bloody, and to my sister, I was simply an eyesore. "Focus, Tessa," Denise hissed. "Miles, is the tablet ready?" "Booting up now," Miles said. I heard the unzip of a leather briefcase, the rustle of stiff paper, and the click of a kickstand being deployed. "I have the temporary medical authority and the financial access request forms preloaded. We just need the biometric signature to execute the immediate transfer of powers." I listened, my heart hammering against my bruised ribs, trying to keep the rhythm from showing on the monitor. Temporary medical authority. They were not just trying to unlock a credit card anymore. That was small thinking. That was the opening gambit. Now that I was incapacitated, they were going for the kill shot. They wanted legal control over my medical decisions, which, by extension in our state, gave them emergency access to my assets to manage my care. "Explain it to me again," Denise said, her voice low and greedy. "Once this is signed, what happens?" "Once we have the biometric authorization," Miles explained, his tone sounding like he was explaining a simple math problem to a child. "The bank will recognize the emergency proxy. We can bypass the 2-factor authentication you said she installed. I will immediately initiate a transfer of all liquid assets, checking, savings, and her investment portfolio, into the Caldwell Family Trust we established this morning." A trust. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my concussion. They had established a trust this morning. While I was being cut out of my car, while I was bleeding on the asphalt, Denise had been sitting in Miles Carver's office, setting up a shell account to drain my life savings into. "And she cannot reverse it?" Tessa asked. "Like, when she wakes up? She is going to be super pissed. Mom?" "She will be grateful," Denise said, her voice dripping with delusional righteousness. "Look at her. She is reckless. She got into a car accident. She obviously cannot take care of herself. I am doing this for her own good. We will manage the money. We will give her an allowance. It is better this way. She was becoming too controlling lately." Controlling. That was the word she used for setting boundaries. That was the word she used for saying no. "The document is structured as an irrevocable transfer for the duration of her medical incompetency," Miles added, And since I have a doctor on my payroll who is willing to certify that her head trauma requires long-term cognitive rehabilitation, we can keep control of the assets for 6 months. Minimum 6 months. They were planning to declare me mentally incompetent. They were planning to lock me away in a rehab facility while they spent every dime I had earned for my daughter's future. They would liquidate my retirement. They would drain Sophie's college fund. They would burn through 10 years of my hard work in a summer of luxury. And when I finally got out, I would be destitute. It was not just theft. It was an execution. They were killing my life so they could feed on the carcass. "Okay," Denise said. "Let us do it. The nurse is going to come back in a minute." I felt the bed depress as someone leaned over me. It was Denise. "Grab her hand," Denise ordered. I felt cool. Thin fingers wrap around my left wrist. "Tessa," she squeezed tight, her nails digging into my skin. "It is limp," Tessa said, sounding grossed out. "It feels like a dead person's hand." "Just hold it steady," Denise snapped. Then, I felt Denise's hands. They were warmer, clammy. She took my left hand from Tessa. She isolated my thumb. "It has blood on it," Denise muttered. "The sensor won't read it if it is dirty." What happened next was an act of such casual, intimate cruelty that it seared itself into my soul forever. Denise did not call for a washcloth. She did not use a sterile wipe. She brought my hand up to her mouth, licked her own thumb, and then proceeded to rub the dried blood and grit off my skin. She rubbed my thumb hard, scrubbing away the evidence of my trauma. Not to clean me, but to polish me. She was cleaning a key. She was wiping down a tool before she used it. She treated my body with the same annoyance one would treat a dirty credit card chip that wouldn't read at a register. "There," Denise said, satisfied. "Clean enough." She lowered my hand back down to the mattress. "Miles, bring the screen closer," she commanded. "I need the angle to be right. If the biometrics fail 3 times, it locks us out." "I am ready," Miles said. "I have the signature field open. Just press her thumb firmly against the sensor box at the bottom of the screen. Hold it for 2 seconds until the ring turns green." I felt the heat of the tablet hovering over my hand. I felt the static electricity radiating from the device. "Do it," Tessa whispered. "Hurry up." "I am doing it," Denise grunted. She gripped my wrist with her left hand, her fingers encircling my bones like a vice. With her right hand, she guided the tablet down. I waited. I needed them to be committed. I needed the intent to be undeniable. I needed the proximity to be absolute. I felt the cold glass of the screen brush against the tip of my index finger. She was adjusting the position. She was aligning my print with the sensor. "Almost there," Miles whispered, his voice breathless with the anticipation of a payday. "Just press now." Denise pushed my thumb down. This was the moment, the point of no return. My eyes snapped open. I did not blink. I did not groggily look around. I went from 0 to 100 in a microsecond. I stared directly up into Denise's face, which was inches from mine, twisted in a mask of concentration and greed. I locked my muscles. I turned my hand from a limp rag into a claw. I dug my fingernails into Denise's palm, drawing a gasp of shock from her, and yanked my hand back toward my chest with a violence that rattled the IV stand. The tablet slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the metal railing of the bed, then tumbled to the floor with a loud crack. The room froze. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just detonated, the vacuum before the shockwave hits. Denise was frozen, her hand still hovering in the air where mine had been. Her mouth was open in a perfect O of surprise. Tessa gasped and stumbled back, hitting the tray table. Miles Carver clutched his briefcase to his chest like a shield. I slowly reached up with my other hand and pulled the oxygen mask down around my neck. The plastic scraped against my skin, the only sound in the room. I took a deep breath. It hurt. It hurt like hell, but the pain was fuel. I looked at Denise. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the woman who had just licked my blood off my thumb so she could rob me blind. "Get your hands off me," I said. My voice was not loud. It was not a scream. It was a low, guttural growl. It was the voice of something ancient and dangerous that had just woken up in a cave. Denise blinked, her brain struggling to reboot. "Riley? You are awake?" "Get out," I said. "Riley, honey, you are confused," Denise stammered, the mask of the concerned mother trying to slide back into place, but it was crooked now. We were checking on you. We were so worried." I looked at the tablet on the floor. The screen was cracked, but the light was still on. The document was still visible. Financial access request. "Worried," I repeated. I pointed a shaking finger at the floor. "Is that why you have a lawyer? Is that why you have a transfer form? Is that why you were trying to use my fingerprint while I was unconscious?" Miles Carver cleared his throat. He adjusted his tie, trying to regain some shred of professional dignity. "Ms. West, I assure you, this is standard procedure for a family in crisis. Your mother was simply trying to ensure your affairs were in order." "My affairs?" I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "My affairs are none of your business, and neither is my money." I turned my gaze to Tessa. She was shrinking into the corner, looking everywhere but at me. "And you," I said. "You stood there and watched. She looks pathetic. That is what you said." "I didn't mean it like that," Tessa squeaked. "I meant injured." "I heard everything," I said. I raised my voice, letting the anger finally bleed into the tone. "I heard about the trust. I heard about the liquid assets. I heard about the 6 months of rehab you were planning to rot me in." Denise's face hardened. The shock was fading, replaced by the defensive aggression of a narcissist caught in the act. "You are being hysterical," she snapped. "We were trying to help you. You are in no condition to make decisions. Look at you. You are a mess. You need us." "I don't need you," I said. "I never needed you. I just paid for you." I reached under the pillow. My hand brushed the cool metal of my phone. I pulled it out. The screen was still glowing. The recording timer was ticking upward. 1842. I held it up so they could see. "I have been recording since before you walked in," I said. "Every word, every threat. The part about the doctor on your payroll who would lie about my condition? Got that too." Miles Carver's face went the color of old ash. He took a step back toward the door. "Now, Ms. West, let us not be hasty. There are privacy laws regarding recording." "In a one-party consent state?" I cut him off. "I don't think so, Miles, and even if there were, I think the Bar Association would be very interested to hear a lawyer conspiring to defraud an unconscious patient." Miles stopped talking. He looked at the door. He looked at Denise. He looked like a rat looking for a sewer grate. "You ungrateful little brat," Denise hissed, her voice shaking with rage. "After everything I have done for you, I gave you life. And you have been charging me rent for it ever since," I said. I pressed the call button on the side of the bed. I held it down. "Nurse," I yelled. "Security, I have intruders." The door flew open. Janelle was there instantly, and behind her, 2 large men in security uniforms. They had been waiting. "Get them out," I said, pointing at my family. "They are harassing me. They tried to force me to sign legal documents while I was sedated. Get them out of my room." "Ma'am, you need to leave," the first guard said, stepping toward Denise. "Don't touch me," Denise shrieked. "She is my daughter. She is delirious. She doesn't know what she is saying." "I know exactly what I am saying," I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "I am saying that the bank is closed. Mom, permanently." The guards moved in. Miles Carver was already slipping out the door. Abandoning his client with impressive speed, Tessa was crying now, real tears of fear. Following the lawyer, Denise stood her ground for one last second. She looked at me with a hatred so pure it felt like a physical blow. "You will regret this," she spat. "You will come crawling back when you realize you are all alone." "I would rather be alone," I said, "than be eaten alive." The guard took her arm. She yanked it away but allowed herself to be shepherded toward the door. As she was pushed out into the hallway, she turned back one last time. "You think you have won?" she screamed. "You have nothing. I will sue you for everything you have. I will take Sophie. Do you hear me? I will take your daughter." The door slammed shut, cutting off her voice. Silence returned to the room. I slumped back against the pillows. The adrenaline that had sustained me was draining away, leaving behind a crushing exhaustion and a pain that felt like fire in my bones. But I smiled. It was a weak, trembling smile, but it was real. I looked at the cracked tablet on the floor. I looked at my thumb, still slightly pink from where she had scrubbed it. They had brought a lawyer. They had brought a script. They had brought a plan to erase my existence and replace it with their own. But they had forgotten one thing. You can try to rob a house. You can try to loot a vault. But you should never, ever try to steal from a woman who has already lost everything except her rage. The door opened again. I flinched, expecting her to break free and come back. But it wasn't Denise. A man walked in. He was wearing a faded flannel shirt and work boots that had seen better decades. He was holding a battered green file folder in his hands like it was a shield. His face was lined with age and worry, but his eyes were clear. "Grandpa," I whispered. Frank West looked at the tablet on the floor. He looked at the empty space where the sharks had just been standing. Then he looked at me. "I passed them in the hall," he said, his voice rough. That lawyer looked like he needed a change of pants. He walked over to the bed and placed his hand on my forehead. It was rough, calloused, and warm. It was the touch of a parent, the touch I had been starving for my entire life. "Did you sign anything?" he asked. "No," I said. "Good," he said. He placed the green folder on the tray table. "Because I brought the nukes." "What is in there?" I asked. Eyeing the folder, Frank smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had been driving a truck for 40 years and knew exactly how to run someone off the road if they threatened his cargo. "Insurance," he said, "and a little surprise I prepared while you were busy being the family ATM." He pulled up a chair and sat down. "Rest now. Riley," he said. "The war just started, but the first battle? You won it." I closed my eyes. The pain was still there. The fear was still there. But for the first time, the loneliness was gone. I wasn't just a wallet anymore. I was a granddaughter. And I was a mother who was going to fight. "Grandpa," I mumbled, sleep dragging me under. "Yeah, kiddo?" She said she would take Sophie. Frank's hand tightened on mine. "Over my dead body," he said, "and I plan on living a long time." The sound of the tablet hitting the floor was the only gavel I needed. It cracked against the linoleum, the screen spiderwebbing into 1,000 shards of glass, effectively ending the digital session Miles Carver had prepared. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the sudden shift in atmospheric pressure. I reached up with my free hand, the one my mother had not just polished with her own saliva, and hooked a finger under the elastic strap of the oxygen mask. I pulled it down. It scraped against my chin, wet with condensation, and I let it snap back against my neck. Then, I sat up. The pain was immediate and blinding. It felt like someone had swung a sledgehammer into my sternum. My broken ribs ground against each other, a tectonic shift of bone and bruised flesh that made my vision swim with black spots. But I did not lie back down. I used the pain. I let it sharpen me. I let it turn the fog of the morphine into a cold, hard clarity. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, the hospital gown rustling. I was eye level with them now. "I heard everything," I said. My voice was rough, like sandpaper over gravel. But it was steady. It did not tremble. It did not plead. It was a statement of fact delivered with the flatness of a coroner reading a time of death. Denise blinked. She looked at the tablet on the floor, then back at me. Her face went through a rapid series of contortions, shock, fear, calculation, before settling on a familiar, condescending mask of pity. "Riley, honey," she said, her voice dropping into that soothing, terrifying register she used when she was gaslighting me. "You are confused. You have a concussion. The doctor said you would be disoriented. The medication is making you paranoid." She took a step forward, reaching out as if to pat my hand, as if I were a frightened animal she needed to calm before she could put the leash back on. "We were not doing anything," she cooed. "We were just trying to help you manage things while you sleep. You are hallucinating, sweetheart." I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. I just reached for my phone on the tray table. "Hallucinating," I repeated. I unlocked the screen. The recording was still running, but I minimized it. I opened the messaging app. I found the thread labeled Mom. "Let us review the reality then," I said. I held the phone up, turning the brightness to the maximum setting so the text glared in the dim room. "Timestamp, 2 hours and 14 minutes ago," I read aloud. "I was in the ambulance. You were at the airport." I looked her dead in the eye. "My card declined. Fix it." I let the words hang there. I articulated every syllable. "Not are you alive? Not where are you hurt?" I continued, my voice rising just enough to cut through the hum of the monitors. "Just fix it, because that is what I am to you, isn't it? I am the IT department for your life. I am the customer service rep for your vanity." I scrolled down. "And here's the follow-up," I said. "I know you are reading this. If I do not have the money in 10 minutes, I am coming to the hospital." I lowered the phone. "You did not come here because you were worried. Mother, you came here because the ATM ate your card, and you wanted to kick it until it spit out cash." Tessa stepped forward now. She looked terrified, her eyes darting between me and the door, but she fell back on the only survival strategy she knew, defending Denise. "You are making a big deal out of nothing. Riley," Tessa said, her voice high and whiny. "Mom was just stressed. She was at the counter. People were staring. You know how she gets with anxiety. She was just worried." "Worried?" I snapped, turning my gaze on my sister. She shrank back as if I had slapped her. "Worried about what? Tessa? Was she worried about my internal bleeding? Was she worried about the fact that my car is a cube of scrap metal right now?" I pointed at the designer carry-on bag Denise had dragged into the room. Or was she worried that her luggage might not get the priority tag? Tessa opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at the bag. She looked at me. She couldn't answer because we all knew the answer. I turned my attention to Miles Carver. The lawyer had been slowly, inch by inch, backing away from the bed. He had closed his briefcase. He was no longer the arrogant shark who had walked in with a temporary medical authority form. He was a man realizing he had just walked into a bear trap. "Mr. Carver," I said. He froze. "I assume you charge by the hour," I said. "I hope you got a retainer up front, because you are not getting a dime from my estate." "Ms. West," Miles stammered, adjusting his tie. "There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding your cognitive state. I was informed by your mother that you were comatose and unable to make financial decisions. Clearly, that information was incomplete." "It was a lie," I said. "And you knew it. You were standing right there when she tried to use my thumbprint. That is not legal counsel. Miles, that is conspiracy to commit fraud. That is elder abuse. Except I am not elderly yet. I am just vulnerable." Miles took another half step back. "I think it is best if I excuse myself. This is a family matter." "No," I said. "This is a criminal matter. But you can run if you want." I looked back at Denise. She was not backing down. If anything, the exposure was making her angrier. The shame of being caught was metabolizing into rage. "Stop it," Denise hissed. "Stop acting like a victim. You are my daughter. You owe me. I have protected you your whole life. I set up that trust to keep you safe." "I don't need your safety," I said. "I unlinked the accounts. Mom." The color drained from her face. It was instantaneous. It was the reaction of a junkie being told the supply chain had been severed. "What?" she whispered. "I removed you," I said. I went into the app before you got here. I revoked your authorized user status. I canceled the supplementary cards. I disabled the overdraft protection. The green dot is gone. Denise, it is gray. It is over. You can't do that, she sputtered. That is my money. I have expenses. I have the club fees due next week. I have the trip. It is my money, I said. It is my salary. It is my savings. And as of today, it is staying in my account. I will sue you, she screamed. The veneer of the concerned mother shattered completely. She looked ugly, her face twisted, her veins bulging in her neck. I will take you to court. I will tell the judge you are mentally unstable. I will tell them you are unfit to raise Sophie. I will take everything back. I raised you. I fed you. I clothed you. I raised you. The universal trump card of toxic parents everywhere. The debt that can never be paid. The original sin of being born. I felt a calm wash over me. It was the calm of someone who finally understands the rules of the game and realizes they no longer have to play. You raised me? I asked quietly. Yes, she yelled. I sacrificed my life for you. Then why? I said, leaning forward, ignoring the screaming agony in my chest. Why does it feel less like parenting and more like a subscription service? The room went silent. If it was love, I said, my voice shaking with the weight of 30 years of realization. It would not come with a monthly invoice. If it was raising, there would be a graduation day. But with you, there is just a recurring charge. You didn't raise a daughter. Denise, you raised a retirement plan. Denise stared at me. Her mouth worked, but no sound came out. She had no script for this. She had no manipulation tactic for a victim who had looked at the ledger and decided to close the account. You ungrateful bitch, she finally whispered. It was the truth. Finally. No more honey, no more sweetheart, just the raw, ugly truth of how she saw me. Maybe, I said, but I am a solvent bitch. She lunged. I don't think she meant to hit me. I think she just wanted to grab me, to shake me, to force me back into the box I had crawled out of. She reached for my shoulders, her hands hooked like claws. You turn that back on, she shrieked. You fix it right now. But before she could touch me, the door to the trauma room burst open. It didn't just open, it hit the wall with a thunderous bang. We all turned. Standing in the doorway was not a nurse. It was not a doctor. It was a wall of flannel and fury. Frank West stood there, my grandfather. He looked older than I remembered. His face lined with the map of a hard life, but he stood as straight as a steel beam. He was not alone. Behind him was a woman in a sharp navy suit, the hospital administrator, judging by the badge, and two large uniformed security officers who looked ready to tackle a linebacker. Frank took one step into the room. He looked at the shattered tablet on the floor. He looked at Miles Carver cowering near the sink. He looked at Tessa shrinking into the curtains. And then he looked at Denise, who was still reaching for me. Step away from my granddaughter, Frank said. His voice was low. It didn't boom. It didn't have to. It had the weight of a freight train. Denise froze. She looked at Frank, and for the first time since she walked in, she looked genuinely afraid. Dad, she stammered. She is having a breakdown. I said step back, Frank barked. He walked over to the bed, placing himself physically between me and her. He was a human shield. He turned his back on her to look at me, his eyes scanning my face, checking for damage. You okay, kid? He asked softly. I am now, I said. Frank turned back to the room. He nodded at the administrator. That is the lawyer, Frank said, pointing a calloused finger at Miles Carver. And that is the woman who tried to bypass medical proxy laws. I want them removed, and I want a police report filed for attempted fraud. The administrator stepped forward. Mr. Carver, I suggest you leave the premises immediately, before we involve the Bar Association. Security will escort you. Miles didn't wait to be told twice. He bolted, clutching his briefcase, not even looking at Denise. And you? Frank said to Denise. Denise straightened up, trying to summon the last shreds of her dignity. You cannot kick me out. I am her mother. You are a trespasser, Frank said. And you are done. The security guard stepped forward. Ma'am, one of them said. Let's go. As they moved toward her, Denise looked at me one last time over Frank's shoulder. There was no love in her eyes. There was only calculation. She was already planning her next move. She was already writing the next text message. But I didn't care. I looked at Frank. He put his hand on my shoulder. A heavy, warm anchor in the storm. I got you, he whispered. I know, I said. And as the door closed on my mother's screaming face, I realized something. I hadn't just survived a car crash today. I had survived my childhood. The green folder hit the metal tray table with a sound that was heavier than paper had any right to be. It was a dull, flat thud, like a judge's gavel striking a wooden block, signaling the end of arguments and the beginning of a verdict. Frank West did not look at my mother. He did not look at my sister. He kept his large, calloused hand resting on the cover of the file. His fingers splayed out as if he were physically holding down a beast that was trying to escape. This, Frank said, his voice rumbling from deep in his chest, is a copy of the Advanced Health Care Directive and Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare that Riley West signed 3 years ago. It was notarized in the presence of 2 witnesses and filed with the county clerk. It was also uploaded to the digital registry of this hospital system. He tapped the cover with his index finger. I am her designated proxy, Frank continued. Not you, Denise, not Tessa, me. The room seemed to shrink. The air, which had been vibrating with Denise's shrill hysteria just moments before, was now sucked into the vacuum of Frank's absolute authority, the hospital administrator, a woman with steel gray hair and a badge that read Director of Patient Advocacy, stepped forward. She was holding a tablet, not to steal my money, but to confirm my rights. We have verified the documents. Mr. West, she said. Her tone was clipped, professional, and entirely devoid of the deference she had likely shown Denise earlier when she thought she was dealing with a grieving mother. The timestamp on the file predates today by 36 months. It is active and valid. Mr. West has sole authority to make medical decisions for the patient if she is incapacitated, and he is the only person authorized to control who has access to her room. She turned her gaze toward Miles Carver. The lawyer was sweating. I could see a bead of perspiration tracking its way down his temple, cutting through the layer of bronzer he wore. Furthermore, the administrator added, her voice dropping to a chillier register, attempts to bypass a designated proxy by claiming next of kin status when a directive exists is a violation of hospital policy, but attempting to forcibly obtain a biometric signature from a patient who is under the influence of narcotics, that is a legal matter. Miles Carver shifted his weight. He looked at the green folder as if it were radioactive. He looked at the door, calculating the distance. I was not informed, Miles said, his voice sounding thin and reedy. My client, Ms. Caldwell, assured me that no such directive existed. She stated explicitly that she was the sole guardian. I was operating under the assumption of good faith based on the information provided to me. Good faith, Frank repeated. He chewed on the words like they were gristle. Frank turned slowly to look at the lawyer. My grandfather was not a tall man, but in that moment, he seemed to fill the entire doorway. He had the presence of a man who had stared down storms on the interstate for 40 years and never blinked. You walked into a trauma unit with a pre-written financial transfer form, Frank said. You did not bring a get-well card. You brought a robbery kit. You stood there and watched a woman try to pry her daughter's eye open to unlock a bank account. Frank took a step toward Miles. Miles took a step back, hitting the sink. You are standing very close to a line, son, Frank said. In fact, I think you crossed it about 10 minutes ago. If you do not want to be answering questions in front of an ethics committee or a grand jury, I suggest you rethink your representation. I am withdrawing, Miles said instantly. Immediately, I cannot represent a client who withholds material facts. You can't do that, Denise screamed. The sound tore through the tension like a ripping canvas. Denise had recovered from her initial shock, and now the reality of her defeat was setting in. But Denise Caldwell did not do defeat. She did escalation. "You are fired!" she yelled at Miles, then spun on Frank. "And you old snake, you planned this. You went behind my back and made her sign those papers." "I helped her protect herself," Frank said calmly. "You stole my rights," Denise shrieked. She lunged toward the table, as if she could physically snatch the authority back by grabbing the folder. "I am her mother. I gave birth to her. I have the right to decide what happens to her. I have the right to manage her assets." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "She is incompetent. Look at her. She barely knows what day it is. She needs me." "She needs a parent," Frank said. "Not a parasite," Denise gasped. The insult hit her like a physical slap. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. "How dare you?" she hissed. "I sacrificed everything for her. I deserve to be the one in charge. It is my right as a mother." Frank looked at her with a pity that was worse than anger. It was the look you give a rabid dog right before you have to put it down. "Motherhood," Frank said, his voice steady and hard as granite, "is a responsibility. It is not a subscription service, and it certainly does not come with the right to withdraw funds from an ATM. It is compensation," Denise roared. "For the years I lost, for the career I gave up." "Security," Frank said. He didn't shout. He just nodded at the 2 guards standing by the door. The guards moved. They were large men, practiced in the art of removing difficult people without causing a lawsuit. They flanked Denise and Tessa. "Ladies," the lead guard said, "it is time to go." "Don't touch me!" Denise swatted at the guard's hand. "I am not leaving. I want to see the doctor. I want a second opinion on her competency. I am not leaving until I get access to that account." "You are trespassing," the administrator said. "And if you do not leave voluntarily, we will call the police and have you charged with disorderly conduct and attempted assault on a patient." Tessa grabbed Denise's arm. My sister was pale, her eyes wide with humiliation. Unlike Denise, Tessa cared what people thought. She cared about the scene. "Mom, stop," Tessa pleaded. "Everyone is looking. Let us just go. Miles already left." I looked over. Sure enough, during the shouting match, Miles Carver had slipped out the door, vanishing like smoke. He knew when a ship was sinking. "I don't care who is looking," Denise yelled, shaking Tessa off. "Let them look. Let them see how a daughter treats her own mother." The guards didn't wait any longer. Each one took an arm. They weren't gentle, but they weren't brutal. They were firm. They lifted Denise slightly off the ground and began to march her backward toward the hallway. "This is illegal!" Denise screamed, her heels dragging on the linoleum. "Frank, you are dead to me. You hear me? You are dead." "I have been dead to you since the day the money ran out." "Denise," Frank muttered. They dragged her through the doorway. The door remained open, and her voice echoed down the corridor, shrill and piercing. "Riley, you are making a mistake. You will be sorry. You cannot survive without me." Heads were popping out of other rooms. Nurses were stopping at their stations. It was the kind of public spectacle Denise feared most, being seen not as the victim, but as the crazy woman being hauled out by security. But she was too far gone in her rage to notice. Tessa scuttled after them, her head down, clutching her purse, trying to become invisible. The noise faded as they turned the corner toward the elevators. The administrator sighed and smoothed her blazer. "I apologize for the disturbance. Ms. West," she said to me, "we will flag your file. They will not be allowed back on this floor or in this building." "Thank you," I whispered. My throat felt raw. "I will leave you two alone for a moment," she said. "The doctor will be in shortly to check your vitals." She closed the door. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy, but it was clean. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannons stopped firing. Frank stood there for a moment, looking at the closed door. Then his shoulders slumped. Just a fraction. The granite facade cracked, revealing the tired old man underneath. He turned to me. His eyes were wet. "I am sorry, kid," he said. "I am sorry it came to this. I tried to warn her. For 20 years, I tried to tell her." "It is not your fault, Grandpa," I said. "You saved me. Again." He walked over to the bed and sat in the chair Denise had vacated. He picked up my hand, the one Denise had scrubbed, and held it in his. "I didn't just bring the folder," Frank said. His voice dropped to a whisper, conspiratorial and low. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He leaned in closer, his eyes twinkling with a hard, grim satisfaction. "When I got your call," he said, "I knew she would try to fight the freeze you put on the cards. I knew she would call the bank and try to impersonate you. She has your social security number. She has your mother's maiden name. Obviously." I nodded. That was how she had always gotten back in. She could talk her way past any security question because she knew the answers better than I did. "So," Frank whispered, "I made a stop on the way here. I called my buddy at the precinct, the one who works in cybercrimes, and I called the fraud department of your bank. We put a special note on your file." "What kind of note?" I asked. "A trusted contact lock," Frank said. "It is a new thing. Basically, if anyone tries to change the password, or override a freeze, or even access the account from a recognized device that is not geolocated to your hospital room, it triggers a silent alarm." I frowned, trying to understand through the haze of my headache. "A silent alarm?" "It doesn't just decline the card," Frank explained. "It logs the location of the attempt, it logs the IP address, and it sends a flagged report directly to the State Financial Crimes Division." He squeezed my hand. "I set a trap. Riley, if she goes home tonight and tries to hack back into your account from her laptop, she is not just breaking bank policy, she is creating a digital evidence trail for a felony investigation." My eyes widened. He hadn't just shielded me. He had given her a shovel and waited for her to dig her own grave. "She won't be able to help herself," I whispered. "She thinks she is entitled to it. She thinks the freeze is just a glitch I created." "Exactly," Frank said. "And when she tries to fix the glitch from her living room, she is going to trigger the system." I lay back against the pillow. A sense of profound relief washed over me, deeper than the painkillers. "Thank you," I said. Frank patted my hand. "Rest now. You did good. You stood up. That is the hardest part." Suddenly the door flew open again. I jumped, my heart spiking. It was Denise. She had broken free from the guards. Her hair was messy, her coat was hanging off one shoulder, and her face was a mask of pure, distilled venom. She didn't come in. She just stood in the doorway, held back by a breathless security guard who had caught up to her. She looked at me. She didn't scream this time. She spoke in a low, cold voice that carried across the room like a draft from a crypt. "You think you are smart," she said. "You think this old man can save you. Ma'am, you are under arrest if you do not move now," the guard shouted. Grabbing her arm, she ignored him. She bored her eyes into mine. "I will make you penniless," she said. "I know where the bodies are buried. Riley, I know about the tax filings from 3 years ago. I know about the consulting income you didn't declare properly because I told you not to. I have the emails. I have the documents." My blood ran cold. "I will report you to the IRS." She smiled. A cruel, jagged thing. "I will report you to your company for conflict of interest. I will burn your reputation to the ground." The guard yanked her back. "I will make you lose everything," she spat, reverting to the primal language of her rage. "You don't know what I have prepared. You have no idea what I have in my safe." Then she was gone. The door swung shut. The room was silent again. But the peace was gone. The air felt poisoned. I looked at Frank. His face had gone pale. "Grandpa," I whispered, "the tax returns. The ones she did for me. The ones she said were creative accounting to save money for Sophie. Frank looked at me, and I saw the fear in his eyes for the first time. She kept copies, he said. She didn't just groom me to pay her bills. I realized, the horror dawning on me. She groomed me to be blackmailable. She set me up. I stared at the white ceiling tiles. The trap I had set for her was active, but the trap she had set for me, that one had been waiting for years, and she had just put her finger on the trigger. 72 hours after the accident, I was sitting at the kitchen table in Frank's house. My ribs were taped. My left arm was in a sling, and every time I took a breath deeper than a sip of air, my chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press. I had discharged myself against medical advice. Or rather, I had negotiated a release because staying in that hospital room, knowing my mother was circling the perimeter like a shark in bloodied water, was doing more damage to my blood pressure than the trauma itself. Frank had set me up in his guest room, but I could not sleep. I had a laptop, a secure Wi-Fi connection that Frank's tech-savvy buddy from the precinct had encrypted, and a pot of black coffee. I was not resting. I was auditing. I opened a blank spreadsheet. It was stark white, a clean grid waiting to be filled with the dirty truth of the last decade. I logged into my bank account. The new password, the 30-character string of nonsense I had created in the trauma bay, worked perfectly. The interface loaded. The trusted contact alert Frank had installed was active. A silent sentinel watching the digital door. I went to the archives. Most people only look at their bank statements for the current month. Maybe they go back a year if they are doing taxes. I went back to the beginning. I went back 8 years. To the month I got my first promotion, and Denise convinced me to add her as an authorized user. I started downloading PDF statements, one by one, month by month, 96 files. I opened the first one, November, 8 years ago. It started small. A grocery bill here, a gas station charge there. I typed the data into my spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, merchant. Column C, amount. Column D, context. Under context, I wrote, gas for mom's car. She said she forgot her wallet. I moved to the next month. December, 8 years ago. Nordstrom, $350. Context, Christmas dress. She said it was an early gift to herself that I would want her to have. I typed it in. I worked through the years. The sun went down outside the window. Frank came in, placed a sandwich next to me, saw the manic intensity in my eyes, and left without saying a word. He knew better than to interrupt a woman who was autopsying her own life. As I reached the 3-year mark, the pattern shifted. The charges were no longer sporadic requests. They were rhythmic. They were expected. Netflix subscription, HBO Max, Hulu, gym membership, wine club, car insurance. She had slowly, methodically, migrated every single one of her recurring expenses onto my card. It was a hostile takeover of my payroll, executed in $5 and $50 increments, so I wouldn't notice the water rising until I was drowning. Then came the emergencies. Urgent care, $200. Vet bill, $400. Car repair, $800. I cross-referenced these dates with my text messages, which I had backed up to the cloud. I found the corresponding text from Denise. Riley, the dog is sick. I am at the vet. I am frantic. Transfer the money or they won't treat him. I looked at the bank statement again. The charge was not from a veterinarian. It was from Paws and Claws Spa and Boutique. She hadn't taken the dog for surgery. She had taken him for a grooming session and bought him a rhinestone collar. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. It wasn't sadness. It was the clinical detachment of a forensic accountant finding the smoking gun. I typed it in. Fraud. I kept going. The numbers began to blur, but the total at the bottom of the spreadsheet kept ticking up. It grew from a few thousand to 10,000, then 50,000, then 100,000. I reached the last 2 years. This was where the overdraft protection scam really kicked in. I saw charges for hotels in the city, nights when she told me she was staying with friends. I saw charges for high-end restaurants, dinners where she claimed she was networking to get back into the workforce. A workforce she never actually rejoined. And then, I saw the name Tessa. It wasn't explicit. The bank statement didn't say Tessa bought this. But the merchant codes told a story my mother's demographic didn't fit. Vape City, Neon Jungle Nightclub, Forever 21, TikTok Shop. Denise did not vape. Denise did not go to clubs that played EDM. Denise would rather die than wear fast fashion. Tessa, my sister, who had stood in the hospital room and called me pathetic, who had held my hand down while our mother tried to scrub my thumb, had been using the supplementary card too. Denise must have given it to her. Or maybe Denise just let her use the number for online shopping to keep her quiet, to buy her loyalty. I added a new column, suspected user. I typed Tessa next to over $4,000 worth of charges in the last 6 months alone. Finally, at 3 a.m, I reached the present day. I reached the charge from the Delta Sky Club that had started this entire war. Delta Airlines. Declined. I looked at the cell at the bottom of the amount column. The sum formula. I pressed enter. The number that appeared on the screen made me stop breathing for a full 10 seconds. $482,941.16. I stared at it. That wasn't just money. That was a house. That was a fully funded college education for Sophie. That was a retirement portfolio. That was 10 years of my life. Waking up at 6 a.m, commuting in the rain, dealing with difficult clients, missing school plays, stressing over deadlines. I had done all of that, not to build a future for my daughter, but to fund a $500,000 lifestyle for a woman who had tried to pry my eye open while I was unconscious. I didn't cry. Tears were useless. Tears were liquid assets, and I was done being liquid. I hit save. I named the file the Caldwell Embezzlement Timeline. I opened a new tab. I went to the bank's fraud reporting portal. I didn't use the standard dispute a charge form. I went to the section marked Identity Theft and Familial Fraud. I began to type. My prose was not poetic. It was legalistic. It was cold. Victim: Riley West. Perpetrator: Denise Caldwell. Method: coercion, unauthorized use of supplementary instruments, and misrepresentation of emergency needs. I uploaded the spreadsheet. Then, I scanned the document Frank had brought home from the hospital administrator. The incident report. It was a beautiful piece of bureaucratic violence. Incident report 4922. Security breach/patient harassment. Description: visitors identified as Denise Caldwell and Tessa Caldwell attempted to bypass hospital security protocols. Nurse Janelle Davis witnessed subjects attempting to forcibly manipulate the patient's biometric data, thumbprint and facial recognition, while the patient was presumed sedated. Subjects were removed by security. Police report filed. I attached that too. I was building a wall. But this time, it wasn't a wall of silence. It was a wall of evidence. I printed everything. The printer in Frank's home office whirred to life, spitting out page after page of my financial autopsy. Frank walked in as the last page landed in the tray. He was holding 2 mugs of coffee. He looked at the stack of paper. "That is a lot of trees," he grunted, setting a mug down next to my good hand. "It is a lot of money," I said. "Nearly $500,000. Grandpa?" Frank let out a low whistle. He pulled out a chair and sat down, his joints cracking. $500,000, he repeated. "She could have bought a condo with that." "She bought an image with it," I said. "She bought the illusion that she was still important." I picked up the stack of papers. "I am filing for a temporary restraining order this morning. The electronic filing system opens at 8. I am attaching the hospital report as the primary evidence of immediate threat." Frank nodded slowly. "Good. The judge will sign that before lunch. Attempted assault on a patient in a trauma ward? That is a slam dunk." "I am also flagging the account for elder financial abuse," I said. "But in reverse, I am claiming she used her status as a parent to unduly influence a dependent adult. It is a stretch, but it puts her on the defensive. Don't forget Tessa, Frank said quietly. I found her, I said, tapping the spreadsheet. $4,000 in nightclubs and vapes. I am listing her as a co-conspirator on the fraud report. Frank took a sip of his coffee. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. You know what she's going to do next, right? He asked. She is not going to take this lying down. Denise does not know how to de-escalate. She only knows how to double down. I know, I said. She threatened to call the IRS. She threatened to expose some consulting work I did a few years ago. She has my old tax returns. Let her, Frank said. If you owe the IRS $5,000 in back taxes, I will pay it. But that is a federal fine. What she did? That is grand larceny. That is prison time. He reached across the table and tapped the paper stack. Riley, he said, his voice serious. Listen to me. When you were a kid, you used to cry when she yelled at you. You used to apologize just to make the noise stop. You can't do that this time. You can't accept an apology. You can't accept a negotiation. This isn't a family dispute anymore. I know, I said. Don't fight with tears, Frank said. Tears dry up. Tears are forgotten. Fight with paper. Paper lasts forever. Paper puts people in jail. I looked at the bold text on the incident report. Forcible manipulation of biometric data. I am not crying, I said. I am prosecuting. My phone rang. It wasn't a text. It was a call. I looked at the screen. It was the bank, specifically, the fraud prevention unit. I put it on speaker so Frank could hear. This is Riley West, I said. Ms. West. The voice on the other end was urgent, professional. This is Detective Miller from the bank's high-risk accounts division. We are calling to verify a request that just came through on your profile. I frowned. I didn't make a request. I am sitting at my kitchen table. We thought so, Miller said. That is why the trusted contact trigger your grandfather set up went off. What kind of request? Frank asked. Leaning in. We received a request to restore default access and reset two-factor authentication due to lost device, Miller said. The request claimed that your phone was destroyed in the car accident and that you needed to regain access via a backup email address. I have my phone in my hand, I said, and I never set up a backup email. We know, Miller said. Here is the concerning part. Ms. West, the request was not made over the phone. It was not made by someone guessing your password. It was made using your actual login credentials, username and password. My blood ran cold. That is impossible, I said. I changed the password yesterday. In the hospital. It is 30 characters long. I haven't written it down. I haven't told a soul. And yet, Miller said, the login was successful. The system only flagged it because the IP address is originating from a location that does not match your current geolocated safety zone. Where is the IP address? Frank asked, his voice low and dangerous. It is coming from a residential address in the North Hills district, Miller said. And the device signature matches an iPad Pro that has previously accessed the account. North Hills. That was where Denise lived. But that didn't make sense. Denise couldn't know the new password. I had created it inside my own head while lying in the hospital bed. I had typed it in with my own fingers. She had been in the hallway, or outside. There was no way she could have seen it, unless, I looked at Frank, he was thinking the same thing I was. The cloud? I whispered. Ms. West? The detective asked. My phone, I said, my voice trembling slightly. When I was in the trauma bay, before I changed the password, I had it, but when I fell asleep when they came in. I remembered the feeling of Denise's hands on me. I remembered Tessa rummaging through my bag. They didn't just try to use my thumb, I realized. They did something else. Ms. West? Block it, I ordered. Lock the account completely. No one gets in, not even me. Freeze it until I can get to a branch in person. Done, Miller said. We are preserving the IP log for the police report. I hung up. I looked at Frank. The spreadsheet on the screen seemed to mock me. I had thought I was ahead. I had thought I had closed the gate. How? I asked. How did she get the password I made up yesterday? Frank stood up. He walked over to the window and looked out at the driveway, checking for cars that weren't supposed to be there. She didn't guess it, Frank said. She installed something, or she cloned something. He turned back to me. Riley, he said, check your phone. Not the bank app. Check the phone itself. Look for apps you didn't download. I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking. I scrolled through the pages of apps, Candy Crush, Instagram, weather. Then I saw it, on the very last page. Tucked inside a folder labeled Utilities, an app icon I didn't recognize, a simple blue shield, Family Locator Remote Management. I tapped it. Status, monitoring, active. Administrator, Mom. She hadn't just been trying to unlock the bank account when she was holding my phone in the hospital, while I was pretending to be unconscious. While Tessa was distracting the nurse, Denise hadn't just been fumbling. She had installed a stalkerware app. She had been mirroring my keystrokes. She had watched me type the new password. She had watched me build the wall. And then she had gone home, sat down at her iPad, and walked right through the front door I thought I had locked. She is watching, I whispered. She is watching everything I do on this phone right now. Frank walked over and took the phone from my hand. Not anymore, he said. He dropped the phone into the pitcher of ice water on the table. The screen flickered once, then went black. Now, Frank said, we get a burner, and we go to war. The burner phone Frank handed me was a cheap, plastic brick that felt like a toy compared to the sleek smartphone drowning in the pitcher of ice water. But when it rang, the sound was sharp and clear. It was Detective Miller from the bank's fraud division again. Ms. West, Miller said, we have the forensic breakdown of the login attempt. I put the phone on the table and hit the speaker button. Frank leaned in, his face illuminated by the glow of the laptop screen where my Caldwell embezzlement timeline spreadsheet was still open. Go ahead, Detective, I said. The attempt to access your account, specifically the request to reset your security protocols, originated from a device with a unique MAC address, Miller explained. It is an iPad Pro, Gen 4. We have seen this device access your account legitimately in the past, usually for transfers under $200, but this time, it was trying to grant full administrative privileges. And the location? Frank asked. The IP address resolves to a residential complex, Miller said. The Heights at North Hills, specifically, Unit 402. I closed my eyes for a second. Unit 402, the apartment I had co-signed for, the apartment where I had spent countless Christmases pretending we were a happy family. She didn't even go to a coffee shop, I whispered. She went straight home and logged in from her couch. Ms. West, Miller continued, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. Because of the flag your grandfather placed on the account, the Trusted Contact Medical Emergency Protocol, this isn't just a declined transaction. The system is designed to catch bad actors who try to exploit a hospitalized account holder by using your password, which we now suspect she obtained via the spyware you mentioned, and attempting to override the freeze from her home IP. She effectively signed a digital confession. She walked right into the camera, Frank said, a grim smile touching his lips. More than that, Miller said. She authorized the device to trust the connection. She clicked, "Remember this device." She didn't just break into the house. She left her driver's license on the kitchen counter. I looked at the spreadsheet. I remembered the text message Denise had sent me a year ago, when I had asked her to return a file of my tax documents. I am keeping copies. Riley, a mother always keeps a backup of her children's lives. You never know when you will need them. She had thought those copies were her leverage. She had thought her dossier on me was a weapon, but she had been so arrogant, so convinced of her ownership over me, that she hadn't realized the battlefield had changed. She was fighting a war with files and blackmail. I was fighting with algorithms and federal banking laws. What happens next? I asked. We have forwarded the packet to the State Financial Crimes Bureau, Miller said, because the amount in question, The unauthorized lifetime transfers, plus the attempted access to the remaining balance, exceeds $100,000. This is no longer a civil dispute. It is a criminal investigation for grand larceny and identity fraud. Thank you, Detective, I said. I hung up. Frank stood up and walked to the window. The sun was rising, casting long, cold shadows across the driveway. You know, Frank said, I didn't think she would be this stupid. I thought she would at least try to hide it. I thought she would use a VPN or go to the library. She doesn't think it is stealing, Grandpa, I said, staring at the blank screen of the burner phone. You only hide when you think you are doing something wrong. Denise thinks she is just accessing what is hers. She thinks the bank made a mistake. Well, Frank said, cracking his knuckles, she is about to find out that the state of Pennsylvania disagrees. By noon, the first domino fell. It wasn't Denise. It was Miles Carver, the state investigator. A woman named Agent Holloway called me to give an update. Apparently, when the fraud alert hit the system, it triggered a review of all recent legal authority requests associated with my Social Security number. Mr. Carver was brought in for questioning regarding the document he presented at the hospital. Agent Holloway told me, the temporary medical authority form. Did he stick to his story? I asked. That he was misinformed? He did better than that, Holloway said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. He rolled over. He provided us with the email correspondence from your mother, apparently. She sent him a draft of the trust agreement 3 days before your accident. My breath hitched. 3 days before? Yes, Holloway said. She was planning to petition for conservatorship based on lifestyle instability. The car accident was just a convenient accelerant. She didn't react to a tragedy. Ms. West. She was waiting for an opportunity. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty house. Denise had been planning to take my freedom even if I hadn't crashed. She had been looking for a way to lock me up and cash me out. Carver gave us everything, Holloway continued. He wants immunity. He claims he was manipulated by a predatory client. He gave us the logs of her asking him how to bypass biometric locks. Good, I said. Let him run. I want the client. The second domino fell an hour later. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Riley? It was Tessa, my sister. Her voice was shaking so hard the phone vibrated against my ear. She sounded like she was hyperventilating. What do you want, Tessa? I asked. I didn't have the energy for her tears. Mom is going crazy, Tessa sobbed. She is throwing things. She is screaming at the walls. She says you ruined us. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I just stopped paying for the party. She is blaming me, Tessa wailed. She told the police Riley. The police came to the door. They asked about the credit cards. They asked about the vape shops and the clubs. Mom told them I stole the card. She told them I used it without her permission. She is trying to pin the last 6 months of fraud on me. I wasn't surprised. When a narcissist is cornered, they don't reflect, they deflect. And Tessa, the golden child, the obedient pet, was the nearest body to throw under the bus. She said she didn't know about the charges, Tessa cried. She said I must have taken the card from her purse, but she knew. She was there. She told me to buy the bottle service. She told me it was on the house. I know. Tessa, I said calmly. I have the timeline. I have the texts where she asks you to pick up things with the card. You do? Tessa sniffled. You can prove it? I can, I said. But you have to choose, right now. You can keep protecting her and go down for credit card fraud, or you can tell the truth. I will tell them, Tessa screamed. I will tell them everything. She made me do it. She said if I didn't use the card, I was being ungrateful. She said you owed us. Go to the station, Tessa, I said. Talk to Agent Holloway. Tell her about the iPad. Tell her who typed in the password. I hung up. The house of cards was not just falling. It was incinerating. They were eating each other alive. Then, at 4 o'clock, the Queen herself called. I knew it was her. The burner phone didn't have caller ID, but the silence on the other end of the line before the first word was spoken carried a specific weight. Riley, her voice was different. The screeching hysteria of the hospital was gone. The imperious command of the text messages was gone. In its place was a voice I hadn't heard in years. The reasonable voice. The voice she used when she wanted to borrow money. Just for a week. "Hello, Mother?" I said. "This has gone too far," Denise said. She sounded tired, like a martyr who had been forced to carry a cross she didn't deserve. "The police were here. They scared Tessa. The neighbors are watching." "That tends to happen when you commit felonies," I said. "Don't use that word," she snapped, then caught herself. She took a breath. "Look, we are family. Families fight, but we don't send each other to jail. That is for trashy people. That is not us." "It seems to be us," I said. "I have a proposal," Denise said. She was slipping into business mode. "I will admit that perhaps I overstepped with the bank transfer. I was panicked. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to hire a lawyer 3 days before my accident," I said. She paused, a beat of silence. "That is a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "But fine. Here is the deal. You drop the fraud report, you call the bank, and tell them it was a domestic dispute. You tell the police you gave me permission but forgot. In exchange, I will agree to a payment plan." I almost laughed. "A payment plan?" "I will pay you back," she said magnanimously. $500 a month, until the debt is cleared. I will sell some jewelry. I will make it right. Riley, but you have to stop this legal nonsense. It is embarrassing me." $500 a month. I did the math in my head. To pay back $480,000 at $500 a month, it would take 800 years. She wasn't offering restitution. She was offering an insult. $500 a month, I repeated. "Yes," she said. "And I will sign a paper, a formal IOU. Is that what you want? A paper victory?" I looked at the window. I looked at the bruise on my arm where Tessa had held me down. I looked at the phantom sensation of her saliva on my thumb. "You gave me 10 minutes, I said. "What?" "In the ambulance," I said. "When I was bleeding, when I was broken. You gave me 10 minutes to transfer $5,000, or you would come to the hospital to humiliate me. You gave me a countdown." "Riley, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I am your mother." "You had 10 minutes, I said. "Now, I am giving you the same courtesy." "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about the process server," I said. "Frank tells me he is pulling into your driveway right now." "Riley, don't." "You have 10 minutes to pack a bag," I said, "because once he tapes that notice to the door, the asset freeze goes into effect. You won't be able to use the car. It is in my name. You won't be able to access the house accounts. The condo is being liened as collateral for the stolen funds." "You can't do this," she screamed, the mask falling away again. "This is my house. I live here." "You live in a crime scene," I said, "and the evidence just locked you out." "I will destroy you," she shrieked. "I will tell everyone. I will tell Sophie." "Sophie will know the truth," I said. "She will know that her grandmother loved money more than she loved us." I heard a sound in the background on her end, a car door slamming, footsteps on the pavement, then the doorbell. Ding-dong. "Get the door." "Mom," I said. "It is not the pizza guy." "Riley!" she screamed. I hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of the kill. Frank walked in from the other room. He had been listening. "She get the message?" he asked. "She got it," I said. Frank nodded. "The server just texted me. The notice is up. Temporary restraining order granted. Asset freezing order granted. And the foreclosure notice on the condo, since you are the guarantor and you are withdrawing backing, is next to it." "She thought it was a bluff," I said. "She thought I was just acting out." She never thought you had it in you, Frank said. She thought she broke you so well that you couldn't function without her direction. She did break me, I said, touching the bandage on my chest. But she forgot that broken things have sharp edges. I looked at the computer screen. The bank account was locked tight. The investigation was open. The lawyers were running. The family was imploding. But there was one more thing. Frank's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his eyebrows shot up. "It is the bank again," he said. "Not Miller? The legal department? What is it?" "They found something else," Frank said slowly. "When they seized the records from the iPad, they found a secondary account, an offshore one, in the Caymans." I stared at him. "She has an offshore account?" "Not her," Frank said. "It is in your name, but she is the beneficial owner." My stomach dropped. "She didn't just spend the money," Frank said, his voice turning dark. "Riley, she was laundering it. She was taking the overdrafts, moving them through a shell, and stashing it." "How much?" I whispered. Frank looked at the screen. "A lot," he said. "Enough that this isn't just about paying bills anymore. Riley, your mother wasn't just a leech. She was running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme using her own daughter as the mule." I stood up. The pain in my ribs was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "Then we don't just take the house," I said. "We take the freedom. We take it all." "She said she prepared something for you," Frank reminded me. "The tax thing." "Let her try," I said. "If I go down for tax negligence, I pay a fine. If she goes down for this, she dies in a cell." I picked up the burner phone. "Call Miller back," I said. "Tell him we found the rest of the money." The sun had fully set now. The room was dark, lit only by the blue light of the laptop. But for the first time in my life, I could see everything perfectly clearly. The game was over. And the hunter had just become the prey. The courtroom smelled of lemon floor wax and stale anxiety. It was a smell I would never forget. The olfactory backdrop to the moment my life finally severed itself from the woman who gave me birth. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my left arm still immobilized in a black medical sling. The bruising on my face had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but I wore no makeup to cover it. I wanted the judge to see the map of my trauma. I wanted the court to see exactly what incapacitated looked like. Next to me, Frank sat like a stone golem carved out of granite and flannel. He did not fidget. He did not look around. He stared straight ahead at the bench, his hands folded over the cane he had started using since the stress of the last week flared up his arthritis. On the other side of the aisle, Denise Caldwell was putting on the performance of a lifetime. She was wearing a modest black dress I had never seen before, likely bought on credit or borrowed from a sympathetic friend she hadn't yet alienated. She wore a single strand of pearls. She dabbed at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked small, frail, and utterly devoted. She looked like a mother who was being persecuted by a confused, ungrateful child. Next to her was not Miles Carver. Miles was currently answering subpoenas from the State Ethics Board. In his place was a public defender who looked overworked and already exhausted by Denise's constant whispering in his ear. The judge, a woman named Honorable Sarah Vance, entered. She had eyes that looked like they had seen every lie a human being could tell, and she did not look impressed by Denise's pearls. "We are here for the matter of West versus Caldwell," Judge Vance said, her voice cutting through the room. "Regarding the petition for a permanent restraining order and the emergency motion for asset recovery." Denise's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client objects to the restraining order. She is the plaintiff's mother. This is a family dispute that has been blown out of proportion due to the plaintiff's head trauma. Ms. Caldwell was simply trying to manage her daughter's affairs during a medical crisis." "Manage?" I repeated softly. "Ms. West," the judge said, looking at me. "Your response?" I didn't give a speech. I didn't cry. I didn't talk about my feelings or my ruined childhood. I simply slid a binder across the table. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady. I am not basing this petition on emotion. I am basing it on data. Frank handed a copy to the bailiff, who took it to the bench. Exhibit A, I said. A text message sent to my phone while I was being transported in an ambulance. Timestamp, 2:17 in the afternoon. I waited for the judge to open the page. My card declined. Fix it, I read aloud. Followed by a threat to come to the hospital if $5,000 was not transferred within 10 minutes. I saw the judge's eyebrows twitch. She looked at Denise. Denise looked down at her handkerchief, sniffing loudly. Exhibit B, I continued. The incident report from St. Mary's Hospital. Witness statements confirmed that the defendant, Denise Caldwell, attempted to physically manipulate my hand to bypass a biometric lock on a banking application while I was medically sedated. This was not management, Your Honor. This was a digital break-in. That is a lie, Denise outburst, jumping to her feet. I was checking her pulse. I was holding her hand. Sit down, Ms. Caldwell, the judge snapped. Exhibit C, I said, ignoring her. The IP log provided by the bank's fraud division. 4 hours after being removed from the hospital by security, a device registered to the defendant's home address accessed my account using a password that was created only hours prior. This password was obtained via keylogging spyware installed on my device without my consent. The room went silent. This was the nail in the coffin. Emotional abuse is hard to prove. Hacking is math, and math does not lie. Spyware? Judge Vance asked, looking over her glasses at Denise. You installed spyware on your adult daughter's phone? It is a family locator, Denise argued, her voice rising in pitch. It is for safety. I need to know where she is. She is a single mother. I am the grandmother. I have a right to ensure their safety. By tracking her keystrokes? The judge asked. I have a right to be reimbursed, Denise screamed. The mask slipped. The pearls and the lace handkerchief vanished, replaced by the snarling entitlement I knew so well. Do you know how much money I spent on her? Do you know what it costs to raise a child in this economy? Piano lessons, braces, private tutors. I gave up my life for her. Frank shifted in his seat. He knew what was coming. He had predicted this moment. So, I said, looking directly at my mother, the $480,000 you took over the last 8 years, that wasn't a gift? That wasn't family support? No, Denise yelled, walking right into the trap. It was repayment. It was what you owed me. It was back pay for 18 years of labor. The entire courtroom seemed to freeze. Even her public defender put his head in his hands. Judge Vance leaned forward. Her expression changed from skeptical to predatory. Ms. Caldwell, the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. Are you stating, on the record, that the funds you accessed were not gifts or familial assistance, but rather a mandatory transaction for services rendered during your daughter's childhood? Yes, Denise said, thinking she was winning. She owes me. It is a debt. Then, the judge said, you have just admitted to tax evasion on nearly $500,000 of unreported income. Furthermore, you have admitted that your access to the account was not based on implied consent of a family member, but was a collection action for a debt that has no legal standing. Denise's mouth opened, then closed. She looked around the room, realizing too late that the walls were closing in. That is not, I didn't mean, she stammered. The court finds the plaintiff's evidence credible and overwhelming. Judge Vance ruled, banging her gavel. The permanent restraining order is granted. 5 years, 500 yards, no contact, direct or third party. But my granddaughter, Denise wailed. If you attempt to contact the minor child, you will be arrested, the judge said. Furthermore, I am referring the evidence regarding the spyware and the unauthorized access to the district attorney's office for prosecution under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Denise slumped into her chair. She looked small now. Not the fake smallness of the Victim Act, but the real, diminishing stature of a bully who has lost her stick. As for the assets, the judge continued, The court orders a full forensic accounting. The defendant's assets are frozen immediately. The condo in North Hills will be placed under a lien to satisfy the restitution of the stolen funds. You can't sell my house, Denise shrieked. Where will I live? That is not the court's concern, Judge Vance said. You have 10 minutes to vacate the courtroom. 10 minutes. I looked at Denise. She was looking at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of hatred and terror. She was waiting for me to save her. She was waiting for the reflex, the conditioning, the daughter who always fixed it. I stood up. I picked up my binder. I looked at her, and I felt absolutely nothing. The cord was cut. Come on, Grandpa, I said. Let us go get some lunch. We walked out. We didn't look back. The fallout was swift and brutal. With the repayment admission on record, the dominoes fell faster than I could have imagined. The state tax board got involved. The IRS got involved. Denise's creative accounting that she had used to hide my money, and hers, was dismantled by a team of auditors who didn't care about her tears. Tessa, faced with the overwhelming evidence of her own spending on the supplementary card, cut a deal. She pled no contest to a misdemeanor charge of unauthorized use of a credit instrument. She received 2 years of probation and community service. Part of her plea deal involved testifying that Denise had instructed her to use the card to keep it active, so the bank wouldn't flag the sudden spikes in spending. Tessa called me once, a month after the hearing. She asked if she could see Sophie. Not yet, I told her. Maybe in a year, maybe when you have a job that doesn't involve spending my money. Get clean. Tessa, then we will talk. Miles Carver was disbarred 3 months later. It turned out my case wasn't the first time he had drafted a temporary authority document for a predatory relative. He had a pattern, and like all predators, once he was wounded, the rest of the pack turned on him. Denise's condo was sold at auction. After the mortgage was paid off and the tax liens were satisfied, the remainder was transferred to me as court-ordered restitution. It wasn't the full amount. It wasn't the $500,000 she had stolen. After the legal fees and the forensic accountants were paid, I received a check for $185,000. I held that check in my hand on a Tuesday morning in late autumn. The air was crisp, smelling of fallen leaves and wood smoke. I drove to the bank, a new bank, one where nobody knew my mother's name. I deposited it. Then, I drove to a small neighborhood on the edge of town. It wasn't the prestigious North Hills district. It was quiet. The houses were modest, with porches and swings. I met the realtor in the driveway of a small, 2-bedroom bungalow with a yellow door. It needs some work, the realtor said. The kitchen is dated. The roof might need a patch in a few years. It is perfect, I said. I put down the deposit that afternoon. I didn't use a mortgage cosigner. I didn't use a family trust. I used my name, Riley West. The remaining money went into a 529 college savings plan for Sophie. I set it up with a password that was 50 characters long, generated by a randomizer, and stored in a physical safe deposit box that only I had the key to. That night, Frank came over to help me paint the living room of the new house. We were eating pizza on the floor, surrounded by drop cloths and paint cans. "You okay?" Frank asked, wiping tomato sauce off his chin. "I am," I said, and I meant it. "I am tired, but I am okay." "You know," Frank said, looking at the wall we had just painted a soft, calming blue. "She is living in a motel. I hear off the highway." He didn't have to say her name. "I know," I said. "Tessa told me." "Do you feel guilty?" Frank asked. He wasn't judging. He was checking. He knew the programming was deep. I thought about it. I thought about the woman in the motel. I thought about the woman who had stood in the trauma bay and demanded I fix her declined card while I bled. I thought about the woman who had licked my thumb to steal my fingerprint. "No," I said. "I feel like I finally paid off the loan." Frank smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, battered keychain. It was a little silver truck, worn smooth by years of handling. "Here," he said, tossing it to me. "I had a spare key made for your front door." But you keep this. It was on my first rig. It brought me home safe for 40 years. I caught the keychain. It felt warm in my hand. Thanks, Grandpa, I said. You didn't lose a mother. Riley, Frank said, his voice gruff with emotion. You just fired a bad employee. And you gained a life. He was right. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the streetlights were flickering on. Sophie was asleep in the next room. Safe, protected, and fully funded. The nightmare of the hospital, the buzzing phone, the screaming demands, it all felt like a movie I had watched a long time ago. I had scars. My shoulder still ached when it rained. My credit report had a few flags that would take years to fall off, but the accounts were unlinked. The green dot was gone. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the window. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see a wallet. I saw Riley West. And for the first time in 30 years, I owned her. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please comment down below where you are listening from. I would love to know how far this story has traveled. Don't forget to subscribe to the Kate Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help share this story with more people who need to know that it is never too late to take back your life.